Yes, I'll start up from the top. So it's disappointing that the state doesn't have these numbers for us because, we're trying to do our job and we can't do our job if the people higher up the chain don't do their job. So, politics is tough, right, to compromise, but we need a budget. And last year, the governor also did not deliver a budget on time and it delayed us again. This is a bad pattern. We cannot effectively govern our schools and do our job if we don't have our budgets, and our staff is Class A, super doing everything they can, and we just get stuck in the mud. So that is really disappointing. Also disappointing is that the state is not covering the loss that was it's a mistake on them. We do lots to prevent losses on us, but it would really be nice to have that state leadership in rectifying that mistake. So in another one in the category of working together, I'm really pleased that the county has risen to this level of support. It's no secret that everything seems to cost more money and people need more support. So I'm just really pleased that this is the starting point. So thank you to our chair and vice chair and to the superintendent and the county executive and the supervisors for coming out with a budget that says that they support our public schools. Dr. Reed, I did have one question that I'd appreciate you addressing at the end of my speaking, which is about interventionists. I've been hearing from staff that all these people that we employed, that schools chose to employ with the ESSER funds, that are of course going to have an off-ramp. What do we do? Because that work is not done, right? We know the kids just can't say, okay, that's it, you're done, you've reached your maximum, this is ongoing. So I'd like to hear how we're gonna off-ramp from ESSER. I'd like to hear a little bit more about that. And then finally about music stipends. Our teachers stood here in our last meeting and they've since sent data. This data is astounding. I mean, we all know that teachers work extra. Every teacher works extra. So just in Hunter Mill, the overages of hours of high schools where I either represent the student or even the band staff, one of the band directors is a friend of mine, the overage of hours ranges from 385 hours, which is 48 8-hour days. So about a month and a half that our bands have at the lowest, and at the highest, over 700 hours. That's 87 and a half days. That's almost 3 months of work in addition to their daytime. So it's such a shame that this right sizing of stipends was not realized sooner, but I think it's an opportunity to talk about how we compensate these staff who is part of their job. Tonight we had a teacher up here with her students singing. This is part of their curriculum and what they do. So I know, Dr. Reed, you've been very receptive, and many of us on the board have been troubled by this. So if you could please speak to that question about the interventionists and off-ramping the ESSER funds, and then also what we're doing for our music stipends to keep performing arts and keep our very amazing staff here in Fairfax. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Marin. I think the off-ramp of ESSER positions is challenging, not just for our interventionists, but other positions. I know one of the things that we really worked hard to do was not hire positions with those funds, because we knew that at some point those funds wouldn't be there and we may not be able to accommodate further budgets. So there are going to be choices, I think, that we'll need to make moving forward in terms of comparative decisions around which positions we're going to be able to continue funding and which not. So in terms of the interventionists specifically, we do know that our ESSER dollars, I believe, will still run through next year. It's the fall of 24 that they're completed. I'm just doing a double check, fall of 24. So for next year, one of the things that we're really going to need to be attentive to is what I try to call our ROI, or return on investment, on a number of positions in terms of their impact in terms of the student experience, right? And our strategic plan, I think, is going to make things much clearer as we look at key goals and then measurements. And as we look at how we're able to meet those measurements and meet those goals, I think the types of positions we're going to be able to fund moving forward in a maybe more challenging budget cycle is going to require a lot of conversation. But I believe for next year, the ESSER dollars will remain intact. As far as the stipends, I think you're correct. Having had an opportunity to meet with Tara and also to hear from a number of you on the board and staff, we recognize the inequities currently that exist around our fine and performing arts stipends, and it is our intent to look at a phase-in or a roll-in plan to make whole those stipends, because we really do value that work, and we know that learning happens both inside and outside the classroom, and that our fine and performing arts are core to our educational mission here in Fairfax County. So we are going to be able to, as Ms. Tolan shared, we're going to be providing more details to you about what that looks like in the next several weeks as we approach May. But we do have, I think, a pretty concrete plan to address that. And I appreciate you bringing both topics up.
Well, thank you. And I think the challenge is that, it is such a large school division and people want to see something happen, and it takes time, and it's hard to voice that to people who, because we want to give them, everyone here wants to give them more. And I will put another request into for our guitar teachers who currently have no stipend. So I know you had that as part of your review.
Well, that's correct, and I know dance as well. One of the things, these fall under the category really of retention of our staff, and I think that as we look at how we're allocating the retention funds that we've set aside, I think there's space clearly for this work, and it's necessary. I think you've all been pretty clear about that with me.